wanted to talk about cancer, and I'm sure many of us have experienced it,
Mm.
whether it's with our own family members, friends, wider family, people who've gone through cancer in the past. Maybe they're going through it right now, and we wanted to see where it's coming from. What emotions are attached to it, how it actually comes into our life. What can we do about it, right?
Mhm.
Any other angle, Bino, you wanted to put on this, you know, that you suggested about our discussion today?
So I think this, like exploring the source of what could be the source,
Yeah.
uh, but also maybe once we've done all that, maybe look a little bit at how how we cope with it, coping mechanisms. Are we harming ourselves spiritually, emotionally, when as to how we receive the news, how we're accepting of it, all those sorts of things.
Right.
Yeah. Do we help manifest it further with our own reactions? So,
Interesting. Okay. We will discuss about, you know, not only what brings about this
Yes.
illness, but also like you mentioned, and also Bino said there was how do we cope
Mm.
with somebody going through cancer in our maybe in our
Yes.
close family or maybe
Yeah.
wider friend circles, etc. So let us start by addressing, what has come to me in terms of having worked with a few people who've been going through or have had cancer, and the one of the key things that comes about as to the reason why this illness appears in our life. I mean, like I said, these illnesses that we have, whether it's cancer or whatever it is that we're going through, is actually already present in ourselves in a form,
Yeah.
in another form or another, right? So it could be present in a form of emotion, uh, energy, something, an experience that we've gone through, trauma usually, okay? And cancer is no different. Cancer comes about where, we've experienced a trauma, and usually it's either in our childhood. We also take it on from our ancestry, funny enough, is what I also found.
Mhm.
Because you will find that if it runs in the family, if
Yeah.
maybe your mom or dad had cancer, then there's a high chance of you getting it too, right? Um, and that's one thing that came about was, we it's usually a trauma that we've kind of buried somewhere, and a lot of anger that we are storing within us,
Mm.
right? And we haven't dealt with. So the first point I put down here is a feeling of powerlessness, anger, also resentment,
Yeah. Mhm.
and being out of control. That also brings about this illness. Okay. Now, what you find also is a lot of people who are going through this illness or have been through this illness, they've spent a lot of time stewing over their past mistakes. They think about that a lot, longing for things that should have taken place
Mm.
or choices that should have been made, so they think too much about what went wrong and how things should have been. And we talked about using the word should and could have, and you find that these people do use these words very often, right? They they stew over what could have been and what would have been and what should be, So and they often also project a strong, calm, and cool facade. So a lot of them try to be like wear a mask, right? They don't show their true feelings, but underneath there is a bubbling volcano. Okay, because it's not that they're able to show to the world. To the world, they seem perfect, they seem fine, everything's good, but within there's there's a turmoil, there's
Mm.
something brewing, and that's also something that you know what I've found as I've worked with a few people who've got cancer is there's they almost bury that down, that they don't find it comfortable to show it to the world. And yet within there is this thing that's going on, which is quite a lot
Mm.
in terms of emotions and the anger and you know, resentment, etc. Yeah. Um, you will also find that they give too much of their time to others. They give too much of themselves. Especially their time and energy, and also they find receiving support difficult because it feels like they're obligated. They feel obligated if they receive support, and obligated to giving more time to others. Like they will need to give more time to others, and thus they find it difficult to receive that support. Yeah. Um, One other thing also, that a trait that I found was from a young age they have felt that they had to be responsible for others. They held this responsibility, and this is something that they maybe didn't want from a young age, but this created again a resentment within them. Why did I have to be responsible for and have this responsibility, right? When I was only so young. So they use this anger and resentment to express boundaries, and I've seen that in many people, where to express boundaries, straight away they would just spark off anger. Yeah. And without these emotions of anger and resentment, they would not feel strong or confident to say no. So their way of saying no is this anger that suddenly comes up. Yeah? So you may identify, and again, I want us to discuss here, some of these points rather than me just stating them. Anyone
Yeah.
has got any views on what I've said so far? Um,
Yeah. So,
fine,
yeah.
fine, yeah.
So, how scary.
Mm,
I could tick everything on this list.
mm, yeah.
So now I've got to figure out a way of not operating from a point of fear. Anyway, um,
So you mean you yourself, or were you taking this list for
I can
somebody
see
else?
all this. I can see all this.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would actually agree the same as well, that I could actually tick a lot of those boxes of what you were saying, what people were
yeah.
actually experiencing.
Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, Vishal, as you know, my dad was diagnosed with mouth cancer, coming up to a year and a bit now. He's fine, but then of course now we're talking about family lines as well. And his sister also had breast cancer. His elder sister who passed away. Yes, so I'm a lot like my dad.
Mm.
Anyway,
We take on these traits, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. This is and this is the reason why it's so important. The work that we're doing to let go of all these emotions that we're holding within, all these energies that we have, because it is this very anger that we may have against somebody or many others, resentment, what should have, right? What our lives should have and what they turned out to be, and the regrets and all that we hold within. It's time to let it go, you know.
Mm.
And that's an important thing to do, because what also happens is people will get cancer, in different parts of their body if they hold on to these emotions. And that's simply, the different parts of the body is simply because those are their weakest parts of the body. That's where then it ends up. It starts off as, right? And we've heard so many times where if it isn't in control and if things go out of hand, then it spreads to the rest of the body, right? So cancer is not specific as into it just targets an area, just gets there, gets to the weakest part of your body. So it could, like, the mouth or any liver cancer, whatever, and then it progresses from there if it's not taken care of. So yeah, Ross, did you want to say something?
Yes, because I'm absolutely convinced by the people I've known and the research I've done that it is linked to blocked emotions. My husband had great resentment over his divorce before he married me. He'd only been married once, and it was a long-term time into the relationship with him, probably round about the time his cancer developed, that I realised he held so much bitterness and resentment and hadn't forgiven her. And she cheated on him and went off with a work colleague. But there was kind of the crux of it was she wanted children and Kevin didn't. And he could never explain to me why. And I said to him, that's a fundamental difference in a relationship that it's going to split it apart in the end. For a woman, a lot of the time it's a basic need and right, really, when you marry someone, if it's been discussed. But he could never forgive her and never understand. And I felt that did affect him. He also had cancer within the family. His mother, his father died from cancer, and it was hereditary. I tried to help him in terms of realizing that, but it was very difficult because he was in complete denial the whole time, which is a very good way to heal cancer, to not buy into the fear. But I'm not sure it was just suppressed. And it was hard for me because I was coming from such a different position. He wholly trusted the NHS, whereas I'd had experience of the NHS, and I go with my mother, and I was coming from a different angle, and I had to, in the end, because it was his death and his life while he was still living, and he survived 3.5 years, I had to respect how he wanted to die, which was incredibly difficult to accept that, when I felt he was making progress at one point, and the cancer was healing, the cancer was shrinking with traditional treatment, but he gave up when the NHS gave up money-wise on him. I actually felt it instantly, that he went, they've written me off, and he died quite quickly after that.
Yeah. It's just once you make that decision, right? Once you in your own self that there's no one there to support me. There's what will happen, and get into that fear, and that then accelerates the cancer side as well, because it's one is acceptance, like you said, right? That the cancer is there and it's a terminal illness, and by accepting that there's that fear already, right?
There is.
Until you go through that fear and you overcome it, that there may be hope on the other side.
You can't start to heal to that. And I spoke to several people when I started that page, which I still have operative, but I haven't done anything, who had healed themselves from cancer. By self-belief.
So you either succumb to that fear, and then it's like how the doctor told your husband, right? And at the moment, like you said, he was told that he's got terminal illness. The way you describe it, he just shrunk, right?
He did. He just shriveled.
And then sometimes I also think about how best is it to tell a patient.
I think you have to be honest like that. I think you have to get through that initial shock.
Yeah.
You can't sugarcoat it. That's the way it
No,
is.
no, you can't. But at the same time, it straight away forms like, I remember Rena's session that we did. It straight away forms a belief in your mind that
Yes.
this is something that is now here and it's incurable.
Yes.
And especially I'm sure at that time, and nowadays I think obviously they've got better treatments and all that, but um, it's an illness that we automatically think it's incurable, and as soon as somebody says the word cancer, that's equals
Yeah.
to death.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 The worst thing is really the monetary side, because the cost of Kevin's chemotherapy tablet he took for 2.5 years before he went to traditional chemo was £1,000 a week. So
Right.
the strain on the NHS of cancer treatment is immense, and lung cancer had the worst prognosis for life. It was 7 months. Well, Kevin survived 3.5 years. He was dogged, determined, a complete believer in the NHS.
Yeah.
Neil only lasted just over a year.
Yeah.
But I think he was ready for death, Neil, absolutely prepared. And it was my sister that wasn't, a new relationship, and she'd lost a previous husband to a brain aneurysm. Both young, both, not old.
Well, thank you so much, Ross, for sharing that with us. Like I was saying, anger and resentment. The other thing that also came up here is, when we use that anger, I think I mentioned this, anger and resentment to express boundaries. Without these emotions, you would not feel strong and confident enough to say no. I already said that, and there is often a big link between abuse and cancer.
Yes.
So somebody who's had cancer or is going through cancer right now, there are underlying traumas of cancer, including violation, invasion, resentment, and feeling out of control. So things that they could have gone through in the past, in their childhood, that they hold, as a emotion within themselves, and also cancer is a symptom of a deeper tissue, right? It is the expression of stagnant and accumulated physical or emotional trauma, right, in your life. So, and yeah, also ancestry, like we were talking about, unresolved trauma from the ancestry line. So, again, things that our forefathers or our great grandparents have gone through, if that's unresolved, we also carry that with us. And the way to identify that is, again, the negative patterns that are repeating in our lives, because that's where we then go to the source of where it's coming from. And I don't know if Rina remembers this, but some of the sessions that we've done with her and Nina, because I've done a lot of sessions on one-to-one basis with Rina and Nina, and we've gone right back into the ancestry as well with some of them. I don't know if Rina remembers this. There's also a curse that we lifted, if you remember, from the ancestry as well. So, yeah, things like that, that need to be addressed. So these, you've got to search for events that have caused emotional buildup of violation, invasion, or feeling out of control. That's the clue. That's where you need to focus on. What it's about is, it's really about looking at what negative patterns are playing in your life. Any kind of anger, resentment that you're holding towards anyone else, try and see if you can let that go by going within and finding the root source of it and working from there. That's the best place to start. And as you are, if you are there supporting someone who's going through cancer, I think one of the questions that Binal asked there was how best to support them, how also best to see this. Again, perspective comes into mind, isn't it? Where we look at somebody going through this, especially if it's a family member, to first of all acceptance. I think acceptance is a big thing, right? Acceptance that this is the reason why this has come about. Again, it all amounts to the big thing that coming into my mind is it's a lesson, right? Something that is telling them that this is what it is that they're carrying and this is what they need to address. And from a place of no judgment, allowing that person to navigate through that and obviously being very supportive. At the same time, not being drawn in yourself, and keeping a very objective kind of overview of it and seeing it as something that is part and parcel of what life is, and what is it here to teach us? What is it here to teach them? Right? Awesome. So yeah, Bino.
So just wanted to share with everyone, when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, for him, it wasn't the cancer that we were worried about, should I say, at that moment, but what it was because he's a heart patient, so only 28% of his heart functions.
Right.
A lot of that muscle has died through previous heart attacks. So what it was whether he could survive that surgery or not. That was the trauma for my father.
Right.
But it was amazing how him and I had a very similar view to him, and that was, yes, I've been dealt this hand, and I am going to have the surgery because I also didn't want to see my father, suffer and go through, not doing the treatment that was available. And he goes, if there's life beyond this operating table, then I will live. If I'm not meant to live beyond here, it's okay. Yeah. So within his limitations, I found there was a lot of power, and he gave us a lot of strength and power. My mom is as soft as a marshmallow, yeah, anything makes her cry and break down. But my father said, no, this is how. And he explained, it was during the end of COVID. So I was very lucky to get out there and see him. But his surgery was then delayed by 10 days. So the 10-day period that I'd gone with, he didn't have the surgery. So I had to say goodbye to my father. I had to say goodbye to him. And our parting lines to each other were, it may not be in this life again. And I drove myself to the airport. I'd hired a car because it was a terrible time for him. I didn't want to be a burden, wanted to be self-sufficient as well and not take those services off him. But I drove to the airport really calm. I flew out of the country really calm because of what the strength he gave us all. But I also believed that this was the way he needed to go if he was going. Yeah. So anyway, just a little share where this sort of came up from.
Fantastic. I mean, no, that's an awesome share, because sometimes we don't know what to do. Sometimes we get so caught up by what's going on that what you showed here was the power of acceptance, right? And accepting that if he were not able to make it, then I'm still at peace with what's going to happen, right? And having exchanged that communication with him, and then having spoken to him as though it could go this way or that way.
Yeah.
Right? And that's amazing. A really good place to be, because then there are no regrets, and there is just peace and calm, no matter what happens.
Also, not a lot of communication of emotions, as we've gone through this journey of life within ourselves, in our relationship. But we spent those 10 days almost living or reliving um, 4.5 decades, if that makes sense. There was so much healing for myself in those days I spent with him. You know, I taught him. I want to say, but I introduced him to the idea of affirmations. I didn't want to go into why he had the cancer. I felt it was such a traumatic time. Um, and when he said in the mouth, for me, I understood why it was in the mouth and why it had manifested in that area. Um, but of course, I didn't want to go into all that with him. But I was teaching him things like, and obviously it's coming out as teaching, so I'll leave it there. Self-love, self-validation. I'm enough. So I was getting him to write. Even my mom, writing down the affirmations and putting them under his pillow, and just saying them whenever he remembered or he was feeling rubbish. So I think that is a I don't know where all that came from as well. But that's the journey we went on.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And what you said there about him having a weak heart, it actually reminds me of my own dad, who's had, a heart attack as well, and has a couple of stents. He's got a pacemaker, that he has now. One of the things that he's about 75, and what I've decided is at least once a year, just to go away with him, which is another thing I'm doing in January, for about a month, is going to India with them, because you never know, you don't know how this illness can come in and take over, and tomorrow he may not be as mobile. So what you did there, spending 10 days with him, like I said, was 4 decades equivalent to. This is something I think it's isn't such that if you are there with them, and you do what you need to do with them, there is then this sudden kind of feeling of acceptance that life moves on, and no matter where they are, we are still connected, and yet we've lived this life to our fullest.
Mm.
Them being there for us and us being there for them. Yeah, wonderful. Okay. Yeah. So thanks for that, everyone. Is there any last words anyone wants to share here? Rina and Nirav, you've been quiet.
Just a question: how could you help someone who's actually going through it and sort of maybe overcome some of these emotions that tend to be linked?
So this is again, like, especially, and I think we had a chat with Binal as well. So when someone is at that age, and they've got this illness, sometimes one is just accepting it, and sometimes it's they again asking them if this is something they would like to do, and whether they have this energy in them to actually go revisit their traumas and they've been through. Sometimes it's not possible, especially at that age.
Yeah, because some people won't talk about it, and others will. So the person's got to be open to it.
Exactly.
I think the worst thing is people treat you differently. It's almost like, I saw it done with Kevin. People stayed away. His brother couldn't deal with it at all because of previous cancer deaths, and he was absent. When Kevin wanted support from his only sibling, his brother couldn't be seen for miles. He was so involved in his own fears rather than looking outwards at what his brother needed. So that to me is the crux. What does that person going through cancer need from you? And try and help them that way, but don't stay away. Even if they try and push you away, give them a bit of space, but keep going back, because support and guidance, I think, is all important.
It is very important. Absolutely. Yeah. And at that age, like I was saying, it may not be something that they would like to do.
Yeah.
Maybe at a stage where they're just tired and they want to move
Yeah, they
on
need to
and
rest.
yeah, need
Yeah.
to rest. But at the same time, I've worked with people who are young, the younger ones especially, in their maybe 30s, 40s. I had recently worked with somebody who had pancreatic cancer, a young she's a housewife and has a young child. So for her, the motivation was there to actually work on the emotions because only having a very young child, she was obviously worried about what if tomorrow I'm not there. At least I want to give this a go.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the times, like for example, in my dad's case, where he's not got cancer, but his heart is very weak, like I said, and he wouldn't want to go through this, you know, bringing up old emotions and trauma, and sometimes you've just got to accept it. Of course, it's there, is on offer. Like it's difficult. I even suggested to him, look, you don't have to work with me. I know of maybe somebody else who can help you out with your emotions and trauma. But he was like, nah.
Mm.
So yeah, it depends on the person really, what they want.
I think men struggle because of this. It's this stiff upper lip. Like I can't cry and I can't share my emotions. Shadow, oh, shush.
Men
So,
more especially, yes, you're right, Ross. Men tend to be more closed. Me and Nirav, we are unique, right?
Yeah, but I'm probably still more closed than you are. So
But you're here.
But you're here. That's it.
true.
Awesome, Rina. You've been quiet. Let's finish. Rina, if you got something, and then we finish.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about my father-in-law who recently passed away. But for him, because of his age, like he was 92 when diagnosed, and straight away, as soon as they told him, he's like, I don't want to have any treatment, and I just want to be home. So he was at home, taken care of by the family. And so it's when you look at it, like the older the people are, yes, they will just accept it and, say it's time to say goodbye kind of thing. But for younger people, it would be different. Yes, they would have that, how do you say, like they would have the willpower that, no, I do want to get better. And obviously, because they're too young to die and they have things they're thinking about. So maybe that is why they are more willing to do what is necessary. So yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. So, yeah, thanks for that. And like Ross was saying earlier, be there for them. Even if they're not in the same place as you are, different country, calling them up, knowing them that you are there if they need you, keeping the communication lines open. Sometimes they might push you, and give them space, but at the same time, go back and be supportive and be there. Yeah.
Just one more. It's just come. Like my mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer about must be about 24 or so years back, and she had a mastectomy done. That was at that time. That was what she had to go through, and then she had to go through the chemo and all that. But she is one person I'll say was so positive, and so like up to now, she's had, after that, she's had knee operations, she's had hip operation, but she's just so positive, and that's something that I really admire in her. Like being positive really helps us to get through all.
Yeah. Having a positive outlook, no matter what illness comes into your life, that absolutely helps too. In fact, there was I'd like to mention here. Have you seen The Secret? Has anyone seen The Secret, the documentary? Yeah.
Not the documentary. I've seen the movie.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, where they all come up. It's rather than a movie, it's more like a, where people come and speak, right? So it's more like a documentary. So it's where there's this example of a lady who's going through cancer and how she overcame it just by simply watching those sitcoms, and the happy ones especially. And all she did every day was like just be in a very happy mood, very positive, and this is something Rina was mentioning, which then reminded me, and just changing your whole outlook, and how that itself also reversed the cancer that she had, and helped heal her. So yeah, I mean, we have it in us. I just like to end this by saying we have the power in us, to overcome any illness. Having this positive outlook, doing our affirmations. Bino was helping our dad do that. Some meditations, uh, having this smile on our face, having a positive outlook, that absolutely can, reverse things, and turn them around. Of course, maybe getting to the root of it as well helps, because then it also means that you're not passing it down your line, your family line. But yeah, doing all of this.
Sadhguru made a post recently. I don't know if you saw it, Vishal, but he talked about that if you were in a blissful, joyful state, then cancer cells can't compete.
Exactly.
To be in that state of mind. And it's why I'm trying so much to be joyful all the time. It may look like I'm a bit OTT, but some of my illness is where the joy didn't flow from all those traumatic experiences. So I was interested to hear him actually say that.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. We can turn it around. We can absolutely turn it around. And for our family members, be there. Support them. At the same time, have an objective view, keep a different perspective, and don't let it affect you. With that, I would like to end. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely, lovely Christmas, festive period. Enjoy yourselves, time, with family, friends, and we'll see you back here in 3 weeks' time.